Yeah, good night. This is the Cutting Edge, and I FM there with you on next Wednesday. Yeah, this is the Cutting Edge. I say yell up again there with you. Start off the program with some African music. We see some things are going on. It's really fascinating. This president named Donald Trump. I don't know much I follow it talk, but there's this diplomat that was killed inside of the embassy in Turkey, and them have said is the leader for the Arab Emirate there set it up, and the CIA in America has said that more than likely is this man set it up. This new king where them have in Arabia now, where I think it's him the last start allow the woman them to drive. But Donald Trump, because America is what Arabia is one of the biggest allies to America, where they sell ammunition to. Donald Trump refused to even entertain the thought that him could have involved, that him even say him could have and him could not have. You know, it's like, and him say, well, it's almost like him say, boy, we can't give up all those billions of dollars worth of money that the Arabs spending with we for buy guns and all them things and bombs and them something there. If we go really talk frivolously about one little man will get murdered in our embassy or so now in a Turkey. The man just dash it one side, Rasta. Him not entertain it at all. I don't know. Him different. Him different, trust me. And him still have the people them behind him. Him still have the people them. Him have a portion of people behind him. You know, to them say, the times I talk about the man of the year, him say, him think him should have get it. If they don't know, argument, say, look, man, I mean, should I get that? Oh, I mean, like, yeah. You know, this is the president of America, you understand? The president of America say, them scam him out of the award as man of the year. And it's him should have get it. He might talk about himself. As a matter of fact, he might talk about himself in the third person. He say, there's no other person but Trump that should have gotten that. Him different. Him different. I tell you, him different. Totally different. Well, you know, say, it's a wake-up call to America. Him is a wake-up call to America. Believe you me. Him wake up America totally. Totally. All the people them who did undercover racists come out. And we realize America still not confront and deal with racism. No, them still not confront it head on. You know, you have little bits and bits here, so but the real issue of American racism is still not spoken of in a serious way. You know, America had a black president, and that is it. The presidents last only for 4 or 8 years in America. Donald Trump gone 4 years already, and well, I tell you, the man is something else. But racism is alive and well in America. And a whole heap of people want to feel, say, yeah, them think they're long time thing. Because when you look on the killings of black people by police in America, when you realize that no police has ever, I want to put it a different way too. I don't remember of no white man that has ever been capitally punished, electrocuted, or otherwise for killing a black person. I don't remember of that case. Somebody can remind me and correct me. Has there ever been a white man in America that has been sent to the electric chair for killing a black person? I don't remember of any. But the killing of black people continue frivolously. We see white youth walk into place and kill people, and them don't call it terrorism. Them start to find some psychological, some brain damage, almost schizophrenic behavior thing of all of the white people them who masculine, them find some way to tell you, say, it's really something in I'm childhood. Them not easy, you know. Them not easy. You watch all Fox News, you know, and you watch all CNN and all them news there. It's not a terrorist move. It's not a brown man do it. It's not a black man do it. It's a white man do it. So it's most something psychologically wrong with the white man for him do these atrocities. Something. And I have to figure it out. And gone to him childhood days, go down in a community where he used to live when he was a little boy and come up with all these things. But make it a black man or a brown man do it. Yes. Terrorism, he might work for ISIL, he might work for this, he might work for that. It's a weird thing. You know, them take a poll in America and them say, white people is safer in the black communities than black people safe in white communities. What them really says that white people don't really feel safe amongst black people, but the chances of them being killed is more in the white communities. The chances of black people being killed is in white communities and black communities. It's weird. You know, Farrakhan say murder is only murder when you kill a white person. That's Farrakhan said that. Say murder is murder in America when you kill a white person. But when you kill a black person, it's a different state of affair now. Black people living in a certain situation, you know, where them is eating up one another. Eating up one another, literally. Eating up one another. And even if you're looking at Jamaica, you have to see that take place. Black people is so traumatized by the situation that we're confronted with right now that we turn against each other. And we are trying to find all sort of ways to solve it. The singers sing, the speakers speak, motivational speaking, stop the crime, stop the gun killing, all these things is out there. But it continue because 400 years of trauma cannot be wiped away so easily. 400 years of trauma cannot be wiped away so easily. With 50 odd years of so-called independence. Because the traumatic experiences of African people, especially in this part of the world, is so devastating that one would want to believe that why we're still talking about slavery. Slavery done long time. Slavery, the idea of slavery, as it was in chattel slavery days, may be gone. But the lingering of those things that was designed, and when we say design, we are talking about designed. When them used to rape young ladies in front of them husband or them man, and rape the man them also in front of them woman and them children. When them used to throw babies to alligators as bait, hang them from light posts and bridges, cut off them testicles and put it in bucket for souvenir, roast them like how them go roast the thing them at Thanksgiving. All of these atrocities was done, and it linger. All these, what them call it, stud farms, where them have to breed up Africans to get younger ones that them can make them born into slavery. Them tell we say slavery gone long time. And now we in the way we call the independent stage of our, we're supposed to celebrate. But 400 years of slavery cannot be wiped away with 50 years of independence. 400 years of slavery cannot be wiped away with 50 years of independence. Because we still see the residues and the lingering of the colonial master. Everywhere you turn, look on us today. Look how we look, how we eat, how we dress, we behavior against each other. Look on it. People say, yeah, but the white man are there. But the white man do have to there to make him system continue. That's what we do understand. Because him left books here. Him left teachers here who feel say because them teaching something, them know the something. And we keep saying it all over and over again. We who believe that we know was taught to us by people who believe them know. We who believe that we know was taught by people who believe them know. And what them believe them know was taught to them by the same slave master who claim that them is not a slave master anymore, but them is dealing with democratic process and democratic principles and religious Christian values. And the same Christian values and the democratic principles was designed to keep the same colonial masters as masters without the colonial panic now. And then them train some way to keep the system intact. And those who keep the system intact actually believe that they are doing things according to freedom program. Yes. Them psychologically do things and believe say the things that them doing is them innately doing it and don't understand how there is a lingering of thoughts and action that is designed to continue even when the slave master is not present physically. And what him leave behind is much greater than if he was in front of us. The system that him designed to keep us in what them call left, right, like zombies. This system that him create over the years and centuries is so embedded in us that we who continue these ways don't ever believe and don't ever know and don't ever understand say it's not our ways that. We've seen on the news today where there's a little island, really little island where the natives them on the island is totally against outside forces coming into them. But them till I use bow and arrow I don't know how much I see it on the news, but CNN did have it. And this guy, this American, 20-year-old, decides he might go up on the island. After people tell him to don't go over there. He might go over there, go missionary work, him say he might go up on, with him Bible. This is an island where people are telling him to don't go over there because these people just don't want to see no. Them people there see all helicopter and a fire born and after. You know, this 20th century we are talking about, like yesterday. We are talking about yesterday this happened. Yesterday. Them people there will see the outside people them police the area by flying helicopter over there. And when the people them see the helicopter come too near, them actually fire bow arrow after the helicopter them. Well, this American who feels say, yes, him is American, him go and go over the island now, and after him go over there and them run him one time, him decide him to go over there with him Bible now for go civilize the native them. One arrow and kill him. One arrow. One arrow. Kill him. 20-year-old with him Bible. The people them don't want the influence reach them. Because some of us understand and see we are going with we, you know. Some of us really realize, say, well, we're in this thing, but we're in deep. That it's very difficult, very, very difficult to shed all of this enslavement and this bondage. It's very difficult because we're in so deep. Every time you look around you see it. You can't go, as you open your eye, as a matter of fact, sometimes you shut your eye and you're in bondage. You shut your eye and you're in bondage. You open your eye in bondage, you eat your food. Some of we are do things and don't even realize what we are doing is not we are do it of our own ways. But it really sticks in our guts perpetually. We are saying that racism is one of the most powerful tools that the Europeans use against African people. You see how the woman them look now. Them buy other people ear and feel proud to look at the glass and say, I feel them ear. Them buy them lipstick and them fingernail. Them no make it. Other people make plastic soap, make them itch up on them finger. Them cut off them eyebrow where God give them and put pencil. Them get some ear where people cut off of them ear in India and sell it back, dead ear. And them love it. And them feel beautiful. And them feel trending. Because that's the way of the Western world. The Western world validate decadence and wickedness. You know, there's a group in Nigeria named Boko Haram. Boko Haram are some extremist Muslims where decide say Western education is a sin. That is what Boko Haram means, for those of you who don't know. Western education is a sin. Because them see what the Western world do to the world, to the earth itself, to the whole idea of pollution and degradation, the industrialization, our whole decadent behavior caused by how we suck on to white people. But we're not suck on to white people because no white people not there, you know, but we still are suck on because them leave them little things, yeah. If you look on them leave them things, yeah, so. So, we are saying, white racism is still being perpetuated. And when we look in America today, the country that boasts to be the leader of the free world and morality standards and all these things, how can we say it's them? Because we know it's not them. We know it's not them. It's not them. Them is the perpetuator and the purveyor of what we find to be so corrupt. You hear them talk about corrupt African states and all these things. Yes, you have African states like Nigeria. It's very corrupt. But guess what? Them will investigate corruption in Africa and then subtly, every time you look on CNN and all this, you hear about a big guy where I hide almost millions of dollars or do some little underground scheming and so on this, and them I try to bring them to justice, and the system protect these criminals. The American system protect these criminals. Yet see the little nigger down the road they saw will not be protected. Look what them do to all of them black man. O.J. Simpson. I mean, white man murder, and him go to jail and come back, and him is a hero again and a over again. Black man murder, go to jail and come back, them find some way to keep him back in a jail. We talk about Bill Cosby, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. Look what them want to do with Serena Williams the other day. Because she hit out against the racism in the tennis. Them start to make her be a villain. I tell you, terrible. Anyway, this is the Colonizing FM. We want to bring to your attention Manifesto Jamaica. And we have been, well, as an associate, but I have done some work for Manifesto Jamaica, I think twice, yes. Well, they are launching a documentary. The documentary, well, I'm going to make them talk about it. Good night.
Yeah, good. Elders.
Muta, my name, here's that? EL.
Yeah, I'm there, man.
All right, tell me who you be. Who this?
So, my name is Shasien Parker.
Oh, you are the ambassador, run for ambassador.
Yeah, the run for ambassador, yeah.
All right, I have to go try hear you loud. Really. All right, talk now.
Yeah, so Shasien Parker, the run for ambassador.
All right.
Participants.
Manifesto. I know Manifesto is a kind of socially inclined organization where do certain social, things. Like, I remember the last time I was with them, I don't know if it was there up at the university, where they discussed the deportee situation and what is there to help deportees that come back to Jamaica. I don't know if you did there, I was there at the time.
I doubt it, but go on with me here, I say.
No, because I said that was one of the times when I got in.
Oh, okay, yeah, man.
Yeah, I think I friend the guys, did invite me there.
Yeah.
All right, so this documentary, I will launch when?
November the 23th, Friday, 4th Garden.
Serengeti, all right. Tell the people them what is the documentary about.
So the documentary is about 12 young men from Jamaica who, what they would call a ghetto, right? Share their story to the movement of parkour, storytelling, which is the theater production and stuff like that, and the art, which is music and dancing. The 12 of us, we all played our personal roles, things that we live in our lives, right?
Yeah.
And our stories or experience that we had in our lives, yeah, stuff like that. And we went to Scotland to participate in a performance art program. And That's just part of it, the documentary.
So which part of them shoot the documentary?
So it's part clippings from Scotland, Jamaica. Yeah, so basically that. Different clippings.
All right, so the documentary is about the youth them from downtown.
Say that again?
No, all right, you said the documentary is some youth from downtown.
Yes.
And them do some projects, build some projects, them do projects through theater.
Yeah.
All right, this only done on Fleet Street, right?
Yeah, man, Fleet Street, right there.
Yeah, me remember that. All right. So, it's not acting, it's just spontaneous things we already do over the years and put it together and make a documentary.
Yeah.
Oh,
from the starting of it.
From the talking of what?
From the starting of the program, man, when it just started in Jamaica.
The manifesto?
Yeah, manifesto, yeah.
All right, you was there at the time when they have this function at the arts school. There was why come like you just joined it, you know? How long ago you remember it?
Well, I just few years me get involved with them, you know, about 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah, all right. You're not going to know what I'm talking about.
I wouldn't know a lot about them.
You're not going to know what I'm talking about. Yeah. All right. So, who do this documentary? Who put it together?
So, the person that behind it, a British Council, the National Theatre of Scotland and Manifesto, Jamaica, Life Yard. So they are the ones who really put together it and other personnel.
How long it is? How long the documentary is?
So the documentary is 1 hour and maybe 5 minutes or so. But it's 1 hour and a couple of minutes.
All right. What the documentary, so what only intend to happen by making this documentary? What only intend to happen by showing it?
So the intention and the goal is to show young persons and other persons that it doesn't really matter where you come from. They can do it. It's just a mindset they have to have, and we really want it to reach far, even become a series on Netflix or a Netflix classic. So we're really looking very far for it.
So when you talk to Netflix already?
Say that again?
When you talk to Netflix already?
Oh, no, man. It's just the end of the year. The universe has help to do it, man. We believe in it.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
All right. So this Friday, November the 23rd.
Yes.
At the Serengeti Hope Zoo.
Right.
And it starts at 6:30 p.m.
Yeah.
All right, you don't go have any more showing of it anyway. We're not going on Fleet Street with it. Or that though?
So them planning that still in a pipeline. Not really finalized as yet.
Okay. So it's showing in Europe already. It's showing England already.
The documentary?
Yeah.
Maybe and maybe not, I doubt it, but this is the premiere for Jamaica.
Oh, you don't know if it's show already then?
No.
Okay. All right. And it's free?
Yes, man. Free, of course.
Everybody's invited.
Yes, but on the manifesto page, you might see a link where you might RSVP.
What
let them know that you'll be coming.
Where's the RSVP? You mean special invited guests?
Yes, you have the option to do that.
And what that mean? What that mean different from a normal person who just walk up and want a seat?
Maybe your seat will be guaranteed.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So you walk up, and RSVP, you're going to have to stand up the whole time then. I don't know.
It will be worth it, man.
All right. Manifesto, I know it's a manifesto have a kind of international flavor about it, but I kind of not hear about manifesto again like what I used to hear about it. We are going with manifesto.
Well, tell you the truth, Moot, me not the right person I think it could have answered that one day. But I have to go to the
But you not say you had run free ambassador, man. You had just run free ambassador for the documentary.
Yes, that's for that project.
Okay, so you're not really a member of Manifesto. You just be here now to deal with this documentary.
Not fully a member, but
half member.
Yeah, I'm in the circle.
Eh?
I'm in the circle, but not fully a member.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to come, but I want to really reach up there still.
Yeah,
it's a Friday, so I guess I can come by a Friday. Friday, November the 23rd at the Serengeti Hope Zoo. That is 6:30 p.m.
Yes.
Manifesto Jamaica Run Free, the documentary. That is the premiere. Eh?
Premiere and first showing.
The first showing. I don't know which part of the show again after that.
No, not as yet.
You in there?
Yes, man, I'm in there.
You're part of the 12, 11?
Yeah, I'm a part of 11.
11 boys, okay. All right, blessed man, give thanks, yeah?
Yeah, man, bless up, see me.
I'm going to make it. At this Friday,
man, it's really a pleasure.
Yeah, all right, give thanks.
Bless up.
Yeah, we're talking to Sashane Parker, Run Free Ambassador, and Manifesto Jamaica Run Free, the documentary. Yeah, them said capture the journey of 11 boys from Parade downtown through a 3-year intervention project built around physical theatre. And the premiere takes place at 6:30 p.m. on Friday, November the 23rd at the Serengeti Hope Zoo. We want to tell you that the following is a public service announcement from Flow. Flow wishes to advise that some residential and business customers in sections of Portmore, Spanish Town and Old Harbour in St. Catherine are currently experiencing disruption in their voice, internet and TV services due to damage to the fiber cable serving the areas. Please be assured that our technical team is working to complete restoration as quickly as possible. Flow apologizes for any inconvenience caused and thank you for your patience. That was a public announcement from Flow. Yeah, this is the cutting edge on IRFM. We are told that the managing director of Manifesto Jamaica is on the line. Good afternoon, good night.
Good night, Uncle Muta.
All right. I was talking to this virgin, but him don't know one thing when I talk about as it relates to Manifesto. I don't know if you listen.
Yes, I was listening.
Well, apparently he was there just to deal with the documentary.
Yes,
I was trying to tell him.
The first program of ours that Sasha has been a part of.
Yeah, I was trying to tell him that I came in contact with Manifesto twice. One at the music Edna Manley and one up at the university.
Facts.
Where
yes.
Prendergast did invite me. What's your name?
Anika.
And Prendergast, yeah.
Right. That's Donisha Prendergast. Yeah,
she was part of
right.
it one at a time.
She still is.
Oh, yeah. She was the one that officially invited me there twice. Anyway, you was there at the time, by the way?
Absolutely. The first event that you're talking about was the festival. You were one of our featured performers at a dub poetry event we had as part of our, I think, second festival in 2012.
Yeah.
And you were also one of our creative mentors and workshop facilitators for the Change to Art program in 2014. So yes, Uncle Muta, you're very right. You're not new to Manifesto Jamaica.
Yeah, I try to talk to him, I say, why could I walk up on a wall and so when we talk to him? I don't know what I say. Anyway, I'm not trying to tell him, say, describe what is Manifesto to the Jamaican people. A lot of people don't know about it. So describe to them what is Manifesto.
True. So Manifesto Jamaica is a Jamaican-grown, non-governmental organization, and our mandate is simply youth empowerment through art and culture. So we design and implement different projects and programs targeting young people centered around the creative arts and culture, and the objective is always to encourage personal development, creative problem solving, and nation building through community building.
Yeah. And this is not only in Jamaica, right?
No. We are international in the sense that Manifesto is active in Toronto, Canada. We're active in New York City, and a little energy bubbling in London as we speak. Toronto is the first organization that existed. Manifesto Jamaica came on stream 2 years later. So we function as sister organizations, but we're independently managed, and our activities are tailored to the spaces where we operate.
I remember that the Canadian contingent was there.
Yeah.
The time when
at the festival.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, you remember, correct.
All right, so see it. And them say me a dinosaur, you know, I see it.
No, you're very correct. You're the most correct dinosaur that you can exist.
And you call me dinosaur too.
You call yourself dinosaur first.
I said, them say. Anyway, look here now. The Run Free documentary, you see, over a period of what time it gonna take to do it?
We got started in 2014 on the project itself. So the bulk of the project work in terms of the parkour training and introducing these youth to the discipline of physical theater and the dramatic arts, the core of that was between 2014 and 2016. So we started out really to kind of teach them these disciplines, the parkour and the theater, and it, as life would have it, it ended up in us traveling to Glasgow to perform a 45-minute production that we devised over that 2-year period. The documentary was finished up in the year and a half since we came back from Scotland, because we realized we just had this really rich story and a large body of footage that was able to tell the cohesive story. So we did spend a year and a half after we came home finalizing the documentary, which is the chronicle of the journey from start to finish.
So it's here on the edited in Scotland?
No, man, right here. Big up Tony Blackford. I can't stop give her ratings. A Jamaican woman who is a world-class editor. Has actually the whole post-production team world-class, right down from edit to sound engineering, color mixing. And we'll have a real-life projectionist who used to work at the cinemas working with us on the night to make sure everything's smooth. So it's an all-star lineup all around.
So I did ask him, after we do it up Hope Zoo, where else you go and carry? Well,
we're hoping Hope Zoo will open the doors to many more invitations to show it at places near and far. We don't have a screening roster yet, but we'll have partners all over Jamaica and, you know, in some places around the world ready to kind of help us move it to where people are willing to make a way. So let's see. Stay tuned to manifestojamaica.com for the updates, because that's where we'll be sharing as we grow.
Well, we're going to continue saying it. We'll see tomorrow, so we'll say give thanks. Say,
grateful.
Invite us, and, you know, we'll try our best here now to really put the word out there, so, you know.
Give thanks. Thank you for always showing up and, you know, encouraging us when you see us doing things worth encouraging. We're really grateful.
We have to do that.
Give thanks.
All right, give thanks.
Mean a lot. Respect. Have a good night.
Yes, that was Leslie Ann Welch, Managing Director of Manifesto Jamaica. As the sister say, it's all over the place. I know definitely say it is in Canada. Definitely. I know it's in Canada. So we will be there. Yes, I will be there. Friday, November the 23rd. Hope Zoo. I hope I know at the zoo they might keep it, you know. The lion there, the lion there won't forget to any time, you know. They have the little one lion just up the sun. Anyway, 6:30. 6:30 at dark up time now, you know. So show can go on at 5:30 now. The other place at dark up here now. Me I tell you, man. Me no remember another time of the year, them time, yeah, when the place gets so dark so quick. It come to me like the place, I mean, me know said place always get dark during the last part of the year, yeah, but it come like the darkness come on quick this time of year, yeah, quick, you know, like November, and the middle of November, and over there. And 5:30, me see place get dark up, you know. Me don't watch it the other day from the program done 5:45. I'm go out the Toronto and I couldn't see the car in the driveway. The place look like night. Anyway, them time of year, yeah, we see them adopt Black Friday down here. But it's what we are talking about when we are talking about how the thing deep to the point where we are doing the things them in our faces, we are do it, and then we realize it's a traumatic thing going, psychological a thing going with we that Halloween, me hear people celebrate Jamaican people celebrate Halloween, you know, really. I mean, really. Black Friday, you know, the capitalists, them dip on the Black Friday thing, because them say them can't get some money here, quick. You know what them say? This weekend, Thanksgiving weekend in America, is the biggest shopping period in America. Even more than Christmas. People buy more things now that them show you how much $1 billion are going to spend Friday, how much $1 billion are going to spend Saturday. Them people, they know how to show them thing, work it out. How much people are going to travel upon plane and how much people are going to travel upon due to car and bus and them something there. During this weekend alone, just this weekend alone. Billions of dollars are going to spend. Them say the most money are going to spend upon Black Friday. Black Friday, them call it, yeah, Black Friday. Them call it Black Friday, yeah. Them say most of the money, them put out how much billions of dollars Americans are going to spend Friday alone. And them have another one named Cyber Shopping, which is the day after Thanksgiving. Cyber Shopping. That means that you just stay at your yard and just anything where you want, buy. You can't stay at your yard and it just come to you right at your door. Or car. It's amazing. You know, we see them have it in Jamaica too, you know, this online shopping thing where people have to left them yard again. Them just take them credit card and just swipe that and just get the card number and just bloop. You want a TV, bloop. You want a fridge, bloop. You want perfume, you want this and that, you just do that. I just tell the thing I work now. Because we see them have supermarket now where no use no money and nobody know in a supermarket but the food where you look for. All you do, as you reach at the door, it's amazing. You reach at the door and take the shopping cart. And all you're going to release the shopping cart, if you swipe your card, your credit card in the shopping cart and release it. You know, like sometimes when you go to the airport and you want a trolley to move your things there, you have to put coins in there. And then you haul it out. Well, it works out by the same principle, but this is like shopping cart now, where you use your credit card. And when you go to the supermarket now, you swipe the credit card in the trolley. And then you walk around now. And every time you put something in the trolley, it will register. Just like when you go to the cash register, you see this little thing where the cash register take up the ISBN number mark around like. Every time you take up something off of the way it name them and put it in the trolley, it register the thing where you put in the trolley. And when you're done shop now, it's amazing. You don't shop. You just come out of the supermarket, pack up your things them, and leave the supermarket. Your credit card take care of everything. So you just go in there. Nobody knowing the credit, nobody knowing there. Nobody knowing the supermarket more than the things them what you want. Just like how you're not going to any ordinary supermarket without people. Just you and your trolley and your credit card. The credit card start you off. Just like how you're asking for something, you say, credit card number, you get the credit card number. And then you just go so bam, 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 and 2 days later you see some come at your door, boom, but. See with the supermarket, nobody know in the supermarket. Unless you shop. Only people them want shop. You know, nobody in there for tell you, say, yes, sir, this, sir, yes, sir. You just walk around and look on the place and you just, everything where you throw in the trolley, register. Everything where you throw in there, register. Because them done have the liquor marking on the back of it already. We register everything. And you just walk out. 1 month time, 3 weeks time, you see your bill come where you didn't have this, that, you didn't buy that. Simple. That's the way of the future. The way of the future. I wonder whether they're going to reach out Jamaica. We see the Chinese are going to build a city in a Caymanas. Did I say it or did I not say it? The Chinese has announced in Jamaica that they are going to build a city in Caymanas. You know where Caymanas is? Well, if you're Jamaica, you don't know where Caymanas is, there's something wrong. And this city is going to cost $2 billion. $2 billion. The city that the Chinese is going to build in Jamaica. We hear Andrea, well, should I say Cabo? We hear Cabo continuously ask, how come she don't hear what go on transpire when Portia went to China? Well, Cabo, if you're listening or if you're not listening, ask no more. This is what was transpired when Portia went to China. When you see she run up the stairs and I run down the stairs, that's when she come back, you hear the Chinese that get how much portion of land, they might build the highway and they might get how much acres, hundreds of acres of land. Well, since Portia gone and this prime minister now take over, because not this prime minister do the things them so them things the way I do now, it start from the other government days. It must have followed through with it because the money they done there, they do the things them already. Well, we now know that the Chinese is going to build a city on Cayman's estate. A city. I don't know what they're going to do with the owner, the bridge in the own. I see them build the highway through Cayman's estate there already. Where we used to go there, we used to make bamboo furniture there. We used to buy bamboo furniture from him. Well, good quality bamboo furniture. We have bed and stool and all them told them we make out of the bamboo furniture. But I hear it says film legacy that. I don't know how much billions of dollars we will get. But we are told that the Chinese is going to build a city there. And it is going to cost $2 billion. That is how much? That is how much? 200 billion. You can't even count that $1 trillion Jamaican dollars. That. Whoa, all right. Well, if things we are talking about and people are going like so we don't know what we are saying. Well, things will come up to bump in my lifetime too. When I talk about no future now, things that will come up to bump in my lifetime. So I could play this. I could play this, that's all. Hear people them here.
I'm bald, so here's the thing. I'm 53, and so racism is generational, meaning that racism has changed over the years from what it used to be in the 60s and the 70s, even in the 80s. Racism these days is more subtle. My concern, my fear, I have a 30-year-old son and a 24-year-old daughter. My concern for them is that this generation is angry, but this generation isn't getting together to collectively do something about the issue. So while my generation was about the awareness, you have to be aware, you have to go out there, you have to create the movement. We would sit in, sit out, stand up, stand out. This generation is like, well, I really don't need to do that because I can sit anywhere I want to. I can live anywhere I want to. I can go anywhere that I want to. This is the thing. The mentality of the individuals who practice racism has not changed. The only thing that's changed is the way in which they express it. Racism is something that is taught. You are taught, don't like that person because they're black. If you look at 2 little children, 3, 4, 5 children playing in a park, they want to play because they're all little kids. They get older and they're told, no, you can't do this. Timmy can't play with Jaquanda. It just doesn't happen. Chica, get out of the road. This is New York. So the issue is that this generation needs to recognize, even though you think you can live anywhere, You try moving into an all-white neighborhood where they really don't want you, the cross will come. They will still burn it. So it's not that we can truly live anywhere we want to. It's just that we have more areas that we can live. The reason that we're not as dedicated as a group to fighting the issue of racism is because before we were all subjected to live in one location, in one area. We supported each other in our black businesses. That's why you had black millionaires. What do we do now? We give other people our money. If all black people stop going to the movie theater, guess what? None of those movies that are hits would be hits. Why? Because ain't nobody go to the movies like black folks. We spend our money, but we don't go to see our movies. We go to see other people's movies. And so they say, since nobody goes to see black movies, then they go, we're not going to make any black movies. Back in the day when you could only go to the all-Negro theater, guess what? Everybody went. Everybody supported it. Now that we have choices, we've left our people behind. So my recommendation, my suggestion, my commitment, my prayer, my hope for your generation is love what you're doing, but you got to recognize that the power is in the numbers. The power is in doing it together. The power is in being a collective, cohesive unit, which we're not. Other races recognize that about us. And so from even a financial perspective of how we spend money, that's where the racism comes into play. They won't go into our stores, but they want our money. They won't come into our neighborhoods, but they want us to spend money in their neighborhoods. They won't come into a black car dealership, but who are the ones who drive some of the very, very expensive cars? So it's not that we don't have the money. We just need to be educated about how we spend it, because we have more power than we realize. We just don't know how to utilize and wield that power. If black people, nobody else but black people, decided that they were going to stop for one day, a 24-hour period, to stop spending, they would be amazed at the impact they would have. But no matter how much black people get together and say they're going to do that, there's always somebody somewhere who is like, I'm going to go to that gas station anyway. I'm going to go to that place anyway. And that's why it doesn't change and it doesn't end. But make no mistake, racism in America is alive and well. It has not died. It has not changed. This experience that my daughter had 3 weeks ago in Stone Mountain shows me that there's a whole other generation of people out there proposing racism, supporting it. They truly believe in it. The next time you're in a mall and a white person bounces into you, see if they say sorry. They don't even see you. They don't know you're there. So it's not that they're being rude. Honestly, they don't see you. It's called being invisible. I'm not American. This has been an amazing experience for me, coming to this country as an adult, having children in a society that I don't know anything about, coming from a country where everybody is black and we don't refer to people by color. You have to learn how to adapt to this environment. My request of your generation is explore outside the boundaries of America, because what it is that you're trying to do, it may not necessarily survive here, but there are other places where you can truly live, be powerful, be wonderful, be free. But having to do that in America is going to take far more time, far more commitment, far more collective, cohesive movement than this place has ever seen. And there aren't enough people who are aware of that to be able to do it together. But understand this, racism has not died and will never die if you know the history of America.
This is the Cutting Edge on IRFM, going through the PSs, talking about racism and the still manifestation of it right now, especially in America. We see it happening. We want to play this poem by a little sister from Kenya. Here goes.
See, Jomo Kenyatta once said, when the missionaries arrived, the Africans had the land and the missionaries had the Bible. They taught us how to pray with our eyes closed. And when we opened them, they had the land and we had the Bibles. Do you see how swiftly they pull wool from the Lamb of God over our eyes? The greatest lie colonialism ever told was that it brought God to Africa. Yes, they brought their Bibles, but they did not bring God to our lands. Yes, they brought their churches, but they did not bring God to our lands. Yes, they brought their guns, but they did not bring God to our lands. What they brought was an image made to justify the breaking of our bodies like communion bread, a false idol that to this day I still see hanging so many Kenyan homes, a frame full of blonde hair, pink and pale skin, eyes, a light blue piercing enough to draw blood, to have already drawn blood.
IRFM, thought-provoking, always smoking, lyrics like a bazooka. You are listening to Mutabaruka.
See, Jomo Kenyatta once said, when the missionaries arrived, the Africans had the land and the missionaries had the Bible. They taught us how to pray with our eyes closed. And when we opened them, they had the land and we had the Bibles. See, Jomo Kenyatta once said, when the missionaries arrived, the Africans had the land and the missionaries had the Bible. They taught us how to pray with our eyes closed. And when we opened them, they had the land and we had the Bible. See, Jomo Kenyatta once said, when the missionaries arrived, the Africans had the land and the missionaries had the Bible. They taught us how to pray with our eyes closed. And when we opened them, they had the land and we had the Bibles. Do you see how swiftly they pull wool from the Lamb of God over our eyes? The greatest lie colonialism ever told was that it brought God to Africa. Yes, they brought their Bibles, but they did not bring God to our lands. Yes, they brought their churches, but they did not bring God to our lands. Yes, they brought their guns, but they did not bring God to our lands. What they brought was an image made to justify the breaking of our bodies like communion bread, a false idol that to this day I still see hanging so many Kenyan homes, a frame full of blonde hair, pink and pale skin, eyes, a light blue piercing enough to draw blood, to have already drawn blood.
Hello, I'm Jared Taylor with American Renaissance. Most people think that the United States was, from the very beginning, dedicated to the idea of racial equality. Yes, they say there was slavery and segregation, but we were always working to fulfill the promise of all men are created equal. Of course, Thomas Jefferson, who wrote those words, was a slaveholder who didn't think the races were equal at all. But that phrase from the Declaration of Independence will haunt his memory forever. Not many people know that in 1776, there were black slaves in all 13 colonies and in the entire New World, from Canada to the tip of South America. In 1770, 40% of the white households in Manhattan owned slaves, and there were more slaves in the colony of New York than in Georgia. 9 of the first 11 presidents were slaveholders. The 2 exceptions were John Adams and John Quincy Adams. Jefferson thought slavery was a bad thing and that slaves would eventually be freed, but he wanted freed slaves sent back to Africa. There's a quotation from him on the wall of the Jefferson Memorial that goes like this: "Nothing is more certainly written in the book of fate than that these people are to be free." Well, in the original, Jefferson didn't stop there, adding, "Nor is it less certain that the 2 races equally free cannot live in the same government." That part has been conveniently forgotten. He wanted blacks deported and separated from whites so that they would be, and I quote, "beyond the reach of mixture." James Madison agreed. He wanted the U.S. government to buy up every slave and deport them. After he served as president, he ran the American Colonization Society, which was set up to send blacks back to Africa. At the inaugural meeting of the society, Henry Clay explained its purpose, quote, "to rid our country of a useless and pernicious, if not dangerous, portion of the population." Some of the most famous early Americans were not just members of the Colonization Society, they were officers. Besides Madison, there were Andrew Jackson, Daniel Webster, Stephen Douglas, William Seward, Francis Scott Key, Winfield Scott, and John Marshall. James Monroe worked so hard to help freed American slaves leave the country and establish Liberia that grateful Liberians named their capital Monrovia in his memory. The founders wanted blacks out and whites in. After the U.S. Constitution was ratified, the very first United States Congress had to decide who could be an American. They passed a law that said only, quote, "free white persons" could be citizens of the new country. Blacks couldn't be citizens even if they had been living in the colonies for generations. It took an amendment to the Constitution in 1868 for blacks to become citizens. And American Indians didn't finally become U.S. citizens until 1924. From colonial times on, there was strong opposition to mixed-race marriage. Massachusetts prohibited miscegenation from 1705 to 1843 and repealed the ban only because people thought it wasn't needed. They thought the idea of mixing was so repellent that no one would do it even if it were legal. Of the 50 United States, 44 at one time had laws prohibiting interracial marriage. White people did not want blacks to vote. In 1855, there were 31 states in the Union, but blacks could vote only in 4. All of them were in New England, and together they had only 4% of the total black population of the country. The federal government made sure that blacks couldn't vote in the territories. When Oregon joined the Union in 1859, its constitution stated that no black person could come, live in, or even visit the state. But Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator, didn't he believe in racial equality? No. During the Lincoln-Douglas debates, he said this: "I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of making voters or jurors out of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. There is a physical difference between the white and black races which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together on terms of social and political equality." Lincoln agreed with Jefferson. He wanted to free the slaves and then deport them. In 1862, Lincoln had the Civil War on his hands, but he was so worried about what to do with free blacks that he named a commissioner on immigration and sent him off to look for countries that would take in the blacks he wanted to be rid of. He also sent a message to Congress calling for free blacks to be deported. U.S. presidents usually say only bland, non-controversial things. Well, this is what some of them said about race. James Garfield wrote, "I have a strong feeling of repugnance when I think of the Negro being made our political equal, and I would be so glad if they could be colonized, sent to heaven, or got rid of in any decent way." Theodore Roosevelt wrote that he had, quote, "not been able to think out any solution to the terrible problem offered by the presence of the Negro on this continent." As for Indians, he said, quote, "I don't go so far as to think that the only good Indians are the dead Indians, but I believe 9 out of 10 are, and I shouldn't inquire too closely into the health of the 10th. William Howard Taft once told a group of black college students, "Your race is adapted to be a race of farmers, first, last, and for all times." Warren Harding thought the races would always be separate. Quote, "This is not a question of social equality, but a question of recognizing a fundamental, eternal, inescapable difference." Harry Truman wrote, "I am strongly of the opinion that Negroes ought to be in Africa, yellow men in Asia, and white men in Europe and America." He also referred to the black servants in the White House as, quote, "an army of coons." Dwight Eisenhower told Supreme Court Justice Earl Warren he understood why Southerners wanted segregated schools. They didn't want, quote, "their sweet little girls to sit in schools alongside some big black bucks." He said that what he regretted most about his 8 years as president was sending federal troops to Little Rock, Arkansas to enforce school integration. It's not until John Kennedy, elected in 1960, that we have a president with views on race that just might be considered acceptable today. Because now, of course, we are supposed to think that race doesn't even exist. And even if it did, it would be immoral to base any decision on race. As I think I have made clear, this is a very recent way of thinking. From colonial times right up through the mid-20th century, virtually all white people believed race was an essential part of the American identity. They understood that people of different races are different and build different kinds of societies. They thought only Europeans would make the United States the kind of country that they would want to pass on to their children. So, there are two views. There is the consensus on race that lasted for more than 300 years, and there's today's view that races are perfectly equal and interchangeable, and that Americans can become black, Hispanic, Asian, Muslim, Hindu, anything at all. And not only will it be still America, it'll be better than ever. Well, which view is correct? Just look around. Read the news. I think you'll find the answer. Thanks for watching.
A Chinese national was captured on video insulting Kenyans, and the president is being deported. Liu Jiaqi was referred to Kenyans as, quote, poor black smelly monkeys, end of quote, is being deported this evening. His flight is set to leave the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport at 10:45 p.m. The Ministry of Immigration says he was deported on racism grounds hours after his permit for selling motorcycles was cancelled. The Chinese embassy in Nairobi says that the remarks were personal and do not in any way represent the views of the vast majority of Chinese people.
Yeah, it's like you are punishing me.
It is a clip that has gone viral on social media. Chinese national identified as Liu Jiaqi hurling insults at Kenyans. In the video captured by an employee at his motorcycle shop in Ruiru, he refers to Kenyans, including President Uhuru Kenyatta, as monkeys.
This is all the Kenyans, like a monkey. Even Uhuru Kenyatta.
It's like a monkey?
Yeah, sure.
The president of this country?
Yeah, sure.
Liu, who was nicknamed Judge by his employees, brags that there is nothing poor, black, smelly Kenyans can do to him if he fires the employee.
Here.
You don't care?
I don't belong to here. I don't like here. Like a monkey people. I don't like. Talk is them. Smell is bad, and poor, and foolish, and black. Who like them? Why not the right people, like the American?
Then why are you coming to do business in Kenya if we are poor, we are black, for money?
The government was quick to act. Liu was arrested and his work permit cancelled. Through its Twitter handle, the Immigration Department said Liu Jiaqi, a Chinese national who was arrested due to his racism remarks, has been deported. But the move, it appears, was not good enough if comments on Twitter are anything to go by. In response to the message by the Immigration Department, many are of the view that he should have been arraigned in court. Kimani says he was within our jurisdiction and the crime was committed in Kenya, so why didn't you charge him? Kadungu Kisumba asks, why deport while they jail our people in China? To Eric Barasa, this could be how the Chinese see us. Liu has been working in the country for the past 8 months with 7 other Chinese nationals who were given a permit to sell motorcycles for Sonling Company that has employed 12 Kenyans. Another fact that has angered Kenyans on Twitter is just how he was given a permit to sell motorbikes, something that can be done by Kenyans. In a statement, the Chinese embassy in Nairobi, through its spokesperson, said the personal talk and the personal feeling of this young man does not represent the views of the vast majority of Chinese people. It is not the first time the Chinese have been linked to racism remarks and actions. In July, the Standard exposed the mistreatment and discrimination of Kenyans working for the Standard Gauge Railway, who are not even allowed to share tables with their Chinese counterparts in the restaurant. Kenya and China enjoy good trade relations, but for some of those who interact with the Chinese at a personal level, the relations are totally different. Rita Tinina, KTN News.
Trouble. Here is what, my Africa is in trouble. Here is what will destroy Africa. It is happening now. If we do not react today, we are finished as a species. There's a global agenda against Africans, and there's a great selling out that is taking place. The most important alert involves a use on Black Africa. Is China colonizing Africa? Yes. It is using soft policy for now. Africa has become a resource of oil, minerals, and metals for China, while this China is doing things that Africans can do, like building our own roads, building our own hospitals, and building our own schools. But we want trade. Immigration and security. There are now over 5 million Chinese who have come into Africa. Many of them could be criminal. We see here in South Africa, they have already started to have their own police station. This has never happened anywhere on earth, where people that invest send the police and build their own police station with their different communication systems. We see here Major General Peko Parasi is talking to Tu Peiwa, Secretary General of the South African Chinese Community and Police Cooperation Center on Local Security. Why Can we not supply our own security? Just imagine if any country or all countries could do this, how many police systems could we have in many places? The Chinese are coming into Africa. In 2010, these are the numbers of Chinese in Africa. These are the numbers of Chinese in Africa. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. They come as workers for oil, for minerals, and many other objectives. What can we do? Payekeche's principle proves that China wants Africa for itself. Eventually, it will wipe out all indigenous people, black people. Here is the proof. They have a record of doing that, revealing Asia's biggest secret agenda. This is Payekeche's principle, the military alert, news alert. We were first in Asia. We are no longer there today. After that, there is coming military conquest of Africa by China. The current situation, misappropriation of arable land and mineral resources, fisheries and oil, massive uncontrolled and illegal immigration, violation of African state sovereignty, increasing military presence, and many others which we have already elaborated. As the leading creditor of the majority of African countries, China is in a strong position, and this raises many concerns. Seizing Africa and its resources, a 2,000-year-old plan. Even the Africa report says the emperor's appetite for African resources, strategic locations, new markets, and reliable allies. China wants it all. You can study this and read this a lot on isu.com shown here. Seizing Africa and its resources is a 2,000-year-old Chinese plan. Knowledge and technology no longer belong to anyone. China and the industrialized nations have one goal: the grabbing of Africa and its innumerable lands and resources. In fact, this ambition has been that of China for more than 2,000 years. The Chinese massacred hundreds of millions of black people who peopled Asia to seize their lands and wealth. It is this conceived, organized, centralized, and implemented China's policy of genocide that is at the core of the research program that produced the Payekeche's principle, the greatest secret of Asia. The Chinese are a people of consumers who build little but destroy everything and kill en masse. These are the constant factors of this nation for thousands of years. Their water and air are polluted to the extreme. Their population is poor and too numerous. China is already using all means, including trickery and weapons, to seize the resources needed by the Chinese. Africa is the only place where to find in abundance and without adequate military protection these resources, land and strategic resources. It is this conceived, organized, centralized, and implemented China's policy of genocide which we must be aware of. Let us look at the Zambian example for starters. To temporarily stop this dangerous policy of China, we must attack it on its criminal record, its criminal past, its genocidal past. It would also help to build consensus and unity in Africa. You can see here the Zambian President Edgar Lungu is pleading. He has been defeated. He shows weakness. He shows failure to lead. Zambia is reportedly in talks or was in talks with China over a possible takeover of the country's electricity company ZESCO after defaulting on payments. That's the trick. They give you the bonds, they give you the loan, they give you the money, which they know you are corrupt and you won't be able to pay back. This is according to a report by Africa Confidential titled Bills, Bonds, and Even Bigger Debts, claiming that Zambia risks losing its sovereignty to China, which is bound to seize its national assets once the government defaults on loans. This is a process. This is a process that is being implemented across Africa by China. China is there to colonize Africa, and African leadership is fast asleep, thinking that money from China is easy, go easy tech. They don't know what's befalling them. But Payekeche principle is alerting us to this and letting us know and learn this criminality. China needs resources. Therefore, this is what China's land grab for Africa is. That's how they are doing it. Sudan, they have sent the military there in guise of peacekeeping, and then Sudan supplies China with oil and arms. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, China fuels illegal ivory trade, destruction of natural resources, cutting of trees, and besmirching of our soils, earth, and rivers. In Zimbabwe and many other countries, China seeks platinum, gold, nickel, and diamonds, and recolonizing and taking over the land. In Uganda, they've taken over the land. They will soon seize everything. In Nigeria, there are 50,000 Chinese that have settled there, intermarrying and mixing up our people. In Sierra Leone, China is building stadiums and doing all it can. In Angola, China is the biggest consumer of Angolan oil. In Namibia, China has built the presidential palace. For African Union, they've built the African Union headquarters in Ethiopia. So China is there for the grab. What do we know? And this is a fact, a provable fact, is that Asian Chinese committed a lot of genocide on black people of Asia. This is it. Global agenda against black Asians. The package principle and its scientific data make it possible to demonstrate the centralized policy of genocide perpetrated by China against blacks throughout Asia. For example, the genocide of the kingdom of Gudara, ancestors of the Japanese, is the sole motive for this endless war that still pits China against Japan today. The numerous genocide is the key explanation of the crisis on the Korean Peninsula. The package principle established a link between this criminal past in China, in Asia, by China's genocide projects in Africa today. Impose the genocide of black people be on the agenda of the Korean Peninsula crisis settlement between China, Japan, and the two Koreas. Only scientific evidence of China's crimes against black people in Asia and their publicity is our weapon now, is the weapon that our government can have to use. Will allow us to temporarily stop the Chinese conquest of Africa and reassess certain contracts that have already been agreed. You must grab this book. You must have this book. You must study this book and give this book, Package Principle, the greatest secret of Asia. You must give it to all the members of parliament in Africa. Brother Bayem Biik crafted this after thorough research over 20 years. You can get this book from Lulu Publishers. And this is a scientific reference. We were the first in China, and we are no longer there. You can also watch Committee Hebrew Ethics, a video on the genocide of black people in Asia by the Chinese and by the mulatto Asian. So, what can you do? And me, what can we do about this? Yes, we are in this together as black people across the earth, whether you're in America, whether you're in Australia, whether you're in New Zealand, whether you're anywhere on earth. We are in this together. We are in this together. We are in this war together, because the death and the demise of the motherland of Africa is your death and demise too. Spread this message. This is what you can do. This vital message, spread it in all your social networks. This is Africa News LA. Let others know that China is recolonizing Africa and will take over the whole continent if we do not stop it today, now. Spread this message. Committee Hebrew Ethics, self-service breeds self-preservation. That's the way for the black people today. Self-preservation. Spread this message. Finally, Africa is free. We have won it already. United States of Africa, we are free. We have won. Thank you. This is Priest Teacher Rabbi Elem Dumizulu. You can contact us on this email, time to walk the talk. This is our website.
Hello, I'm Jared Taylor with American Renaissance. Most people think that the United States was, from the very beginning, dedicated to the idea of racial equality. Yes, they say there was slavery and segregation, but we were always working to fulfill the promise of all men are created equal. Of course, Thomas Jefferson, who wrote those words, was a slaveholder who didn't think the races were equal at all. But that phrase from the Declaration of Independence will haunt his memory forever. Not many people know that in 1776, there were black slaves in all 13 colonies and in the entire New World, from Canada to the tip of South America. In 1770, 40% of the white households in Manhattan owned slaves, and there were more slaves in the colony of New York than in Georgia. 9 of the first 11 presidents were slaveholders. The 2 exceptions were John Adams and John Quincy Adams. Jefferson thought slavery was a bad thing and that slaves would eventually be freed, but he wanted freed slaves sent back to Africa. There's a quotation from him on the wall of the Jefferson Memorial that goes like this: "Nothing is more certainly written in the book of fate than that these people are to be free." Well, in the original, Jefferson didn't stop there, adding, "Nor is it less certain that the two races equally free cannot live in the same government." That part has been conveniently forgotten. He wanted blacks deported and separated from whites so that they would be, and I quote, "beyond the reach of mixture." James Madison agreed. He wanted the U.S. government to buy up every slave and deport them. After he served as president, he ran the American Colonization Society, which was set up to send blacks back to Africa. At the inaugural meeting of the society, Henry Clay explained its purpose, quote, "to rid our country of a useless and pernicious, if not dangerous, portion of the population." Some of the most famous early Americans were not just members of the Colonization Society, they were officers. Besides Madison, there were Andrew Jackson, Daniel Webster, Stephen Douglas, William Seward, Francis Scott Key, Winfield Scott, and John Marshall. James Monroe worked so hard to help freed American slaves leave the country and establish Liberia that grateful Liberians named their capital Monrovia in his memory. The founders wanted blacks out and whites in. After the U.S. Constitution was ratified, the very first United States Congress had to decide who could be an American. They passed a law that said only, quote, "free white persons" could be citizens of the new country. Blacks couldn't be citizens even if they had been living in the colonies for generations. It took an amendment to the Constitution in 1868 for blacks to become citizens. And American Indians didn't finally become U.S. citizens until 1924. From colonial times on, there was strong opposition to mixed-race marriage. Massachusetts prohibited miscegenation from 1705 to 1843 and repealed the ban only because people thought it wasn't needed. They thought the idea of mixing was so repellent that no one would do it even if it were legal. Of the 50 United States, 44 at one time had laws prohibiting interracial marriage. White people did not want blacks to vote. In 1855, there were 31 states in the Union, but blacks could vote only in 4. All of them were in New England. And together they had only 4% of the total black population of the country. The federal government made sure that blacks couldn't vote in the territories. When Oregon joined the Union in 1859, its constitution stated that no black person could come, live in, or even visit the state. But Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator, didn't he believe in racial equality? No. During the Lincoln-Douglas debates, he said this: "I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of making voters or jurors out of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. There is a physical difference between the white and black races which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together on terms of social and political equality." Lincoln agreed with Jefferson. He wanted to free the slaves and then deport them. In 1862, Lincoln had the Civil War on his hands, but he was so worried about what to do with free blacks that he named a commissioner on immigration and sent him off to look for countries that would take in the blacks he wanted to be rid of. He also sent a message to Congress calling for free blacks to be deported. U.S. presidents usually say only bland, non-controversial things. Well, this is what some of them said about race. James Garfield wrote, "I have a strong feeling of repugnance when I think of the Negro being made our political equal, and I would be so glad if they could be colonized, sent to heaven, or got rid of in any decent way." Theodore Roosevelt wrote that he had, quote, "not been able to think out any solution to the terrible problem offered by the presence of the Negro on this continent." As for Indians, he said, quote, "I don't go so far as to think that the only good Indians are the dead Indians, But I believe 9 out of 10 are, and I shouldn't inquire too closely into the health of the 10th. William Howard Taft once told a group of black college students, "Your race is adapted to be a race of farmers, first, last, and for all times." Warren Harding thought the races would always be separate. Quote, "This is not a question of social equality, but a question of recognizing a fundamental, eternal, inescapable difference." Harry Truman wrote, "I am strongly of the opinion that Negroes ought to be in Africa, yellow men in Asia, and white men in Europe and America." He also referred to the black servants in the White House as, quote, "an army of coons." Dwight Eisenhower told Supreme Court Justice Earl Warren he understood why Southerners wanted segregated schools. They didn't want, quote, "their sweet little girls to sit in schools alongside some big black box." He said that what he regretted most about his 8 years as president was sending federal troops to Little Rock, Arkansas to enforce school integration. It's not until John Kennedy, elected in 1960, that we have a president with views on race that just might be considered acceptable today. Because now, of course, we are supposed to think that race doesn't even exist. And even if it did, it would be immoral to base any decision on race. As I think I have made clear, this is a very recent way of thinking. From colonial times right up through the mid-20th century, virtually all white people believed race was an essential part of the American identity. They understood that people of different races are different and build different kinds of societies. They thought only Europeans would make the United States the kind of country that they would want to pass on to their children. So, there are two views. There is the consensus on race that lasted for more than 300 years, and there's today's view that races are perfectly equal and interchangeable, and that Americans can become black, Hispanic, Asian, Muslim, Hindu, anything at all. And not only will it be still America, it'll be better than ever. Well, which view is correct? Just look around. Read the news. I think you'll find the answer. Thanks for watching.
A Chinese national was captured on video insulting Kenyans, and the president is being deported. Liu Jiaqi was referred to Kenyans as, quote, poor black smelly monkeys, end of quote, is being deported this evening. His flight is set to leave the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport at 10:45 p.m. The Ministry of Immigration says he was deported on racism grounds hours after his permit for selling motorcycles was cancelled. The Chinese embassy in Nairobi says that the remarks were personal and do not in any way represent the views of the vast majority of Chinese people.
Yeah, it's like you are punishing me.
It is a clip that has gone viral on social media. Chinese national identified as Liu Jiaqi hurling insults at Kenyans. In the video captured by an employee at his motorcycle shop in Ruiru, he refers to Kenyans, including President Uhuru Kenyatta, as monkeys.
This is all the Kenyans, like a monkey. Even Uhuru Kenyatta. All of them.
It's like a monkey.
Yeah, sure.
The president of this country.
Yeah, sure.
Liu, who was nicknamed Judge by his employees, brags that there is nothing poor, black, smelly Kenyans can do to him if he fires the employee.
Yeah.
You don't care?
I don't belong to here. I don't like here. Like a monkey people. I don't like talk with them. Smell is bad, and poor, and foolish, and black. Who like them? Why not the right people, like the Americans?
Then why are you coming to do business in Kenya if we are poor, we are black, for money?
The government was quick to act. Liu was arrested and his work permit cancelled. Through its Twitter handle, the Immigration Department said Liu Jiaqi, a Chinese national who was arrested due to his racism remarks, has been deported. But the move, it appears, was not good enough if comments on Twitter are anything to go by. In response to the message by the Immigration Department, many are of the view that he should have been arraigned in court. Kimani says he was within our jurisdiction and the crime was committed in Kenya, so why didn't you charge him? Kadungu Kisumba asks, why deport while they jail our people in China? To Eric Barasa, this could be how the Chinese see us. Liu has been working in the country for the past 8 months with 7 other Chinese nationals who were given a permit to sell motorcycles for Sonling Company that has employed 12 Kenyans. Another fact that has angered Kenyans on Twitter is just how he was given a permit to sell motorbikes, something that can be done by Kenyans. In a statement, the Chinese embassy in Nairobi, through its spokesperson, said the personal talk and the personal feeling of this young man does not represent the views of the vast majority of Chinese people. It is not the first time the Chinese have been linked to racism remarks and actions. In July, the Standard exposed the mistreatment and discrimination of Kenyans working for the Standard Gauge Railway, who are not even allowed to share tables with their Chinese counterparts in the restaurant. Kenya and China enjoy good trade relations, but for some of those who interact with the Chinese at a personal level, the relations are totally different. Rita Tinina, KTN News.
Trouble. Here is what, my Africa is in trouble. Here is what will destroy Africa. It is happening now. If we do not react today, we are finished as a species. There's a global agenda against Africans, and there's a great selling out that is taking place. The most important alert involves a use on Black Africa. Is China colonizing Africa? Yes. It is using soft policy for now. Africa has become a resource of oil, minerals, and metals for China, while this China is doing things that Africans can do, like building our own roads, building our own hospitals, and building our own schools. But we want trade. Immigration and security. There are now over 5 million Chinese who have come into Africa. Many of them could be criminal. We see here in South Africa, they have already started to have their own police station. This has never happened anywhere on earth, where people that invest send the police and build their own police station with their different communication systems. We see here Major General Peko Parasi. He's talking to Tu Peiwa, Secretary General of the South African Chinese Community and Police Cooperation Center on Local Security. Why can we not supply our own security? Just imagine if any country or all countries could do this. How many police systems could we have in many places? The Chinese are coming into Africa. In 2010, these are the numbers of Chinese in Africa. These are the numbers of Chinese in Africa. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. They come as workers for oil, for minerals, and many other objectives. What can we do? Paeket's principle proves that China wants Africa for itself. Eventually, it will wipe out all indigenous people, black people. Here is the proof. They have a record of doing that, revealing Asia's biggest secret agenda. This is Paeket's principle, the military alert, news alert. We were first in Asia. We are no longer there today. After that, there is coming military conquest of Africa by China. The current situation, misappropriation of arable land and mineral resources, fisheries and oil, massive uncontrolled and illegal immigration, violation of African state sovereignty, increasing military presence, and many others which we have already elaborated. As the leading creditor of the majority of African countries, China is in a strong position, and this raises many concerns. Seizing Africa and its resources, a 2,000-year-old plan. Even the Africa report says the emperor's appetite for African resources, strategic locations, new markets, and reliable allies. China wants it all. You can study this and read this a lot on isu.com shown here. Seizing Africa and its resources is a 2,000-year-old Chinese plan. Knowledge and technology no longer belong to anyone. China and the industrialized nations have one goal: the grabbing of Africa and its innumerable lands and resources. In fact, this ambition has been that of China for more than 2,000 years. The Chinese massacred hundreds of millions of black people who peopled Asia to seize their lands and wealth. It is this conceived, organized, centralized, and implemented China's policy of genocide that is at the core of the research program that produced the package principle, the greatest secret of Asia. The Chinese are a people of consumers who build little but destroy everything and kill en masse. These are the constant factors of this nation for thousands of years. Their water and air are polluted to the extreme. Their population is poor and too numerous. China is already using all means, including trickery and weapons, to seize the resources needed by the Chinese. Africa is the only place where to find in abundance and without adequate military protection these resources, land and strategic resources. It is this conceived, organized, centralized, and implemented China's policy of genocide which we must be aware of. Let us look at the Zambian example for starters. To temporarily stop this dangerous policy of China, we must attack it on its criminal record, its criminal past, its genocidal past. It would also help to build consensus and unity in Africa. You can see here, the Zambian President Edgar Lungu is pleading. He has been defeated. He shows weakness. He shows failure to lead. Zambia is reportedly in talks or was in talks with China over a possible takeover of the country's electricity company ZESCO after defaulting on payments. That's the trick. They give you the bonds, they give you the loan, they give you the money, which they know you are corrupt and you won't be able to pay back. This is according to a report by Africa Confidential titled Bills, Bonds, and Even Bigger Debts, claiming that Zambia risks losing its sovereignty to China, which is bound to seize its national assets once the government defaults on loans. This is a process. This is a process that is being implemented across Africa by China. China is there to colonize Africa, and African leadership is fast asleep, thinking that money from China is easy, go easy tech. They don't know what's befalling them. But package principle is alerting us to this and letting us know and learn this criminality. China needs resources. Therefore, this is what China's land grab for Africa is. That's how they are doing it. Sudan, they've sent the military there in guise of peacekeeping, and then Sudan supplies China with oil and arms. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, China fuels illegal ivory trade, destruction of natural resources, cutting of trees, and besmishing of our soils, earth, and rivers. In Zimbabwe and many other countries, China seeks platinum, gold, nickel, and diamonds, and recolonizing and taking over the land. In Uganda, they've taken over the land. They will soon seize everything. In Nigeria, there are 50,000 Chinese that have settled there, intermarrying and mixing up our people. In Sierra Leone, China is building stadiums and doing all it can. In Angola, China is the biggeth consumer of Angolan oil. In Namibia, China has built the presidential palace. For African Union, they've built the African Union headquarters in Ethiopia. So China is there for the grab. What do we know? And this is a fact, a provable fact, is that Asian Chinese committed a lot of genocide on black people of Asia. This is it. Global agenda against black Asians. The package principle and its scientific data make it possible to demonstrate the centralized policy of genocide perpetrated by China against blacks throughout Asia. For example, the genocide of the kingdom of Gudara, ancestors of the Japanese, is the sole motive for this endless war that still pits China against Japan today. The numerous genocide is the key explanation of the crisis on the Korean Peninsula. The package principle established a link between this criminal past in China, in Asia, by China's genocide projects in Africa today. Impose the genocide of black people be on the agenda of the Korean Peninsula crisis settlement between China, Japan, and the two Koreas. Only scientific evidence of China's crimes against black people in Asia and their publicity is our weapon now, is the weapon that our government can have to use. Will allow us to temporarily stop the Chinese conquest of Africa and reassess certain contracts that have already been agreed. You must grab this book. You must have this book. You must study this book and give this book, Package Principle, the greatest secret of Asia. You must give it to all the members of parliament in Africa. Brother Bayem Biik crafted this after thorough research for over 20 years. You can get this book from Lulu Publishers. And this is a scientific reference. We were the first in China, and we are no longer there. You can also watch Committee Hebrew Ethics, a video on the genocide of black people in Asia by the Chinese and by the mulatto Asian. So, what can you do? And me, what can we do about this? Yes, we are in this together as black people across the earth, whether you're in America, whether you're in Australia, whether you're in New Zealand, whether you are anywhere on earth. We are in this together. We are in this together. We are in this war together, because the death and the demise of the motherland of Africa is your death and demise too. Spread this message. This is what you can do. This vital message, spread it in all your social networks. This is Africa News LA. Let others know that China is recolonizing Africa and will take over the whole continent if we do not stop it today, now. Spread this message. Committee Hebrew Ethics, self-service breeds self-preservation. That's the way for the black people today. Self-preservation. Spread this message. Finally, Africa is free. We have won it already. United States of Africa, we are free. We have won. Thank you. This is Priest Teacher Rabbi Elem Dumizulu. You can contact us on this email, time to walk the talk. This is our website.
Hello, I'm Jared Taylor with American Renaissance. Most people think that the United States was, from the very beginning, dedicated to the idea of racial equality. Yes, they say there was slavery and segregation, but we were always working to fulfill the promise of all men are created equal. Of course, Thomas Jefferson, who wrote those words, was a slaveholder who didn't think the races were equal at all. But that phrase from the Declaration of Independence will haunt his memory forever. Not many people know that in 1776, there were black slaves in all 13 colonies and in the entire New World, from Canada to the tip of South America. In 1770, 40% of the white households in Manhattan owned slaves, and there were more slaves in the colony of New York than in Georgia. 9 of the first 11 presidents were slaveholders. The 2 exceptions were John Adams and John Quincy Adams. Jefferson thought slavery was a bad thing and that slaves would eventually be freed, but he wanted freed slaves sent back to Africa. There's a quotation from him on the wall of the Jefferson Memorial that goes like this: "Nothing is more certainly written in the book of fate than that these people are to be free." Well, in the original, Jefferson didn't stop there, adding, "Nor is it less certain that the 2 races equally free cannot live in the same government." That part has been conveniently forgotten. He wanted blacks deported and separated from whites so that they would be, and I quote, "beyond the reach of mixture." James Madison agreed. He wanted the U.S. government to buy up every slave and deport them. After he served as president, he ran the American Colonization Society, which was set up to send blacks back to Africa. At the inaugural meeting of the society, Henry Clay explained its purpose, quote, "to rid our country of a useless and pernicious, if not dangerous, portion of the population." Some of the most famous early Americans were not just members of the Colonization Society, they were officers. Besides Madison, there were Andrew Jackson, Daniel Webster, Stephen Douglas, William Seward, Francis Scott Key, Winfield Scott, and John Marshall. James Monroe worked so hard to help freed American slaves leave the country and establish Liberia that grateful Liberians named their capital Monrovia in his memory. The founders wanted blacks out and whites in. After the U.S. Constitution was ratified, the very first United States Congress had to decide who could be an American. They passed a law that said only, quote, "free white persons could be citizens of the new country." Blacks couldn't be citizens even if they had been living in the colonies for generations. It took an amendment to the Constitution in 1868 for blacks to become citizens. And American Indians didn't finally become U.S. citizens until 1924. From colonial times on, there was strong opposition to mixed-race marriage. Massachusetts prohibited miscegenation from 1705 to 1843 and repealed the ban only because people thought it wasn't needed. They thought the idea of mixing was so repellent that no one would do it even if it were legal. Of the 50 United States, 44 at one time had laws prohibiting interracial marriage. White people did not want blacks to vote. In 1855, there were 31 states in the Union, but blacks could vote only in 4. All of them were in New England, and together they had only 4% of the total black population of the country. The federal government made sure that blacks couldn't vote in the territories. When Oregon joined the Union in 1859, its constitution stated that no black person could come live in or even visit the state. But Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator, didn't he believe in racial equality? No. During the Lincoln-Douglas debates, he said this: "I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of making voters or jurors out of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. There is a physical difference between the white and black races which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together on terms of social and political equality." Lincoln agreed with Jefferson. He wanted to free the slaves and then deport them. In 1862, Lincoln had the Civil War on his hands, but he was so worried about what to do with free blacks that he named a commissioner on immigration and sent him off to look for countries that would take in the blacks he wanted to be rid of. He also sent a message to Congress calling for free blacks to be deported. U.S. presidents usually say only bland, non-controversial things. Well, this is what some of them said about race. James Garfield wrote, "I have a strong feeling of repugnance when I think of the Negro being made our political equal, and I would be so glad if they could be colonized, sent to heaven, or got rid of in any decent way." Theodore Roosevelt wrote that he had, quote, "not been able to think out any solution to the terrible problem offered by the presence of the Negro on this continent." As for Indians, he said, quote, "I don't go so far as to think that the only good Indians are the dead Indians, but I believe 9 out of 10 are, and I shouldn't inquire too closely into the health of the 10th. William Howard Taft once told a group of black college students, "Your race is adapted to be a race of farmers, first, last, and for all times." Warren Harding thought the races would always be separate. Quote, "This is not a question of social equality, but a question of recognizing a fundamental, eternal, inescapable difference." Harry Truman wrote, "I am strongly of the opinion that Negroes ought to be in Africa, yellow men in Asia, and white men in Europe and America." He also referred to the black servants in the White House as, quote, "an army of coons." Dwight Eisenhower told Supreme Court Justice Earl Warren he understood why Southerners wanted segregated schools. They didn't want, quote, "their sweet little girls to sit in schools alongside some big black bucks." He said that what he regretted most about his 8 years as president was sending federal troops to Little Rock, Arkansas to enforce school integration. It's not until John Kennedy, elected in 1960, that we have a president with views on race that just might be considered acceptable today. Because now, of course, we are supposed to think that race doesn't even exist. And even if it did, it would be immoral to base any decision on race. As I think I have made clear, this is a very recent way of thinking. From colonial times right up through the mid-20th century, virtually all white people believed race was an essential part of the American identity. They understood that people of different races are different and build different kinds of societies. They thought only Europeans would make the United States the kind of country that they would want to pass on to their children. So, there are two views. There is the consensus on race that lasted for more than 300 years, and there's today's view that races are perfectly equal and interchangeable, and that American can become black, Hispanic, Asian, Muslim, Hindu, anything at all. And not only will it be still America, it'll be better than ever. Well, which view is correct? Just look around. Read the news. I think you'll find the answer. Thanks for watching.
A Chinese national was captured on video insulting Kenyans, and the president is being deported. Liu Jiaqi was referred to Kenyans as, quote, poor black smelly monkeys, end of quote, is being deported this evening. His flight is set to leave the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport at 10:45 p.m. The Ministry of Immigration says he was deported on racism grounds hours after his permit for selling motorcycles was cancelled. The Chinese embassy in Nairobi says that the remarks were personal and do not in any way represent the views of the vast majority of Chinese people.
Yeah, it's like you are punishing me.
It is a clip that has gone viral on social media. Chinese national identified as Liu Jiaqi hurling insults at Kenyans. In the video captured by an employee at his motorcycle shop in Ruiru, he refers to Kenyans, including President Uhuru Kenyatta, as monkeys.
This is all the Kenyans, like a monkey. Even Uhuru Kenyatta. All of them.
It's like a monkey.
Yeah, sure.
The president of this country.
Yeah, sure.
Liu, who was nicknamed Judge by his employees, brags that there is nothing poor, black, smelly Kenyans can do to him if he fires the employee.
Yeah.
You don't care.
I don't belong to here. I don't like here. Like a monkey people. I don't like talk with them. Smell is bad, and poor, and foolish, and black. Who like them? Why not the right people, like the American?
Then why are you coming to do business in Kenya if we are poor, we are black, for money?
The government was quick to act. Liu was arrested and his work permit cancelled. Through its Twitter handle, the Immigration Department said Liu Jiaqi, a Chinese national who was arrested due to his racism remarks, has been deported. But the move, it appears, was not good enough if comments on Twitter are anything to go by. In response to the message by the Immigration Department, many are of the view that he should have been arraigned in court. Kimani says he was within our jurisdiction and the crime was committed in Kenya, so why didn't you charge him? Kadungu Kisumba asks, why deport while they jail our people in China? To Eric Barasa, this could be how the Chinese see us. Liu has been working in the country for the past 8 months with 7 other Chinese nationals who were given a permit to sell motorcycles for Sonling Company that has employed 12 Kenyans. Another fact that has angered Kenyans on Twitter is just how he was given a permit to sell motorbikes, something that can be done by Kenyans. In a statement, the Chinese embassy in Nairobi, through its spokesperson, said the personal talk and the personal feeling of this young man does not represent the views of the vast majority of Chinese people. It is not the first time the Chinese have been linked to racism remarks and actions. In July, the Standard exposed the mistreatment and discrimination of Kenyans working for the Standard Gauge Railway, who are not even allowed to share tables with their Chinese counterparts in the restaurant. Kenya and China enjoy good trade relations, but for some of those who interact with the Chinese at a personal level, the relations are totally different. Rita Tinina, KTN News.
Trouble. Here is what, my Africa is in trouble. Here is what will destroy Africa. It is happening now. If we do not react today, we are finished as a species. There's a global agenda against Africans, and there's a great selling out that is taking place. The most important alert involves a use on Black Africa. Is China colonizing Africa? Yes. It is using soft policy for now. Africa has become a resource of oil, minerals, and metals for China, while this China is doing things that Africans can do, like building our own roads, building our own hospitals, and building our own schools. But we want trade. Immigration and security. There are now over 5 million Chinese who have come into Africa, many of them could be criminal. We see here in South Africa, they have already started to have their own police station. This has never happened anywhere on earth, where people that invest send the police and build their own police station with their different communication systems. We see here Major General Peko Parasi is talking to Tu Peiwa, Secretary General of the South African Chinese Community and Police Cooperation Center on Local Security. Why can we not supply our own security? Just imagine if any country or all countries could do this. How many police systems could we have in many places? The Chinese are coming into Africa. In 2010, these are the numbers of Chinese in Africa. These are the numbers of Chinese in Africa. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. They come as workers for oil, for minerals, and many other objectives. What can we do? Paeket's principle proves that China wants Africa for itself. Eventually, it will wipe out all indigenous people, black people. Here is the proof. They have a record of doing that, revealing Asia's biggest secret agenda. This is Paeket's principle, the military alert, news alert. We were first in Asia. We are no longer there today. After that, there is coming military conquest of Africa by China. The current situation, misappropriation of arable land and mineral resources, fisheries and oil, massive uncontrolled and illegal immigration, violation of African state sovereignty, increasing military presence, and many others which we have already elaborated. As the leading creditor of the majority of African countries, China is in a strong position, and this raises many concerns. Seizing Africa and its resources, a 2,000-year-old plan. Even the Africa report says the emperor's appetite for African resources, strategic locations, new markets, and reliable allies. China wants it all. You can study this and read this a lot on isu.com shown here. Seizing Africa and its resources is a 2,000-year-old Chinese plan. Knowledge and technology no longer belong to anyone. China and the industrialized nations have one goal: the grabbing of Africa and its innumerable lands and resources. In fact, this ambition has been that of China for more than 2,000 years. The Chinese massacred hundreds of millions of black people who peopled Asia to seize their lands and wealth. It is this conceived, organized, centralized, and implemented China's policy of genocide that is at the core of the research program that produced the Paeket's principle, the greatest secret of Asia. The Chinese are a people of consumers who build little but destroy everything and kill en masse. These are the constant factors of this nation for thousands of years. Their water and air are polluted to the extreme. Their population is poor and too numerous. China is already using all means, including trickery and weapons, to seize the resources needed by the Chinese. Africa is the only place where to find in abundance and without adequate military protection these resources, land and strategic resources. It is this conceived, organized, centralized, and implemented China's policy of genocide which we must be aware of. Let us look at the Zambian example for starters. To temporarily stop this dangerous policy of China, we must attack it on its criminal record, its criminal past, its genocidal past. It would also help to build consensus and unity in Africa. You can see here, the Zambian President Edgar Lungu is pleading. He has been defeated. He shows weakness. He shows failure to lead. Zambia is reportedly in talks, or was in talks with China over a possible takeover of the country's electricity company ZESCO after defaulting on payments. That's the trick. They give you the bonds, they give you the loan, they give you the money, which they know you are corrupt and you won't be able to pay back. This is according to a report by Africa Confidential titled Bills, Bonds, and Even Bigger Debts, claiming that Zambia risks losing its sovereignty to China, which is bound to seize its national assets once the government defaults on loans. This is a process. This is a process that is being implemented across Africa by China. China is there to colonize Africa, and African leadership is fast asleep, thinking that money from China is easy, go easy tech. They don't know what's befalling them. But Package Principle is alerting us to this and letting us know and learn this criminality. China needs resources. Therefore, this is what China's land grab for Africa is. That's how they are doing it. Sudan, they have sent the military there in guise of peacekeeping, and then Sudan supplies China with oil and arms. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, China fuels illegal ivory trade, destruction of natural resources, cutting of trees, and besmishing of our soils, earth, and rivers. In Zimbabwe and many other countries, China seeks platinum, gold, nickel, and diamonds, and recolonizing and taking over the land. In Uganda, they've taken over the land. They will soon seize everything. In Nigeria, there are 50,000 Chinese that have settled there, intermarrying and mixing up our people. In Sierra Leone, China is building stadiums and doing all it can. In Angola, China is the biggest consumer of Angolan oil. In Namibia, China has built the presidential palace. For African Union, they've built the African Union headquarters in Ethiopia. So China is there for the grab. What do we know? And this is a fact, a provable fact, is that ancient Chinese committed a lot of genocide on black people of Asia. This is it, global agenda against black Asians. The Package Principle and its scientific data make it possible to demonstrate the centralized policy of genocide perpetrated by China against blacks throughout Asia. For example, the genocide of the kingdom of Gudara, ancestors of the Japanese, is the sole motive for this endless war that still pits China against Japan today. The numerous genocide is the key explanation of the crisis on the Korean Peninsula. The Package Principle established a link between this criminal past in China, in Asia, by China's genocide projects in Africa today. Impose the genocide of black people be on the agenda of the Korean Peninsula crisis settlement between China, Japan, and the two Koreas. Only scientific evidence of China's crimes against black people in Asia and their publicity is our weapon now, is the weapon that our government can have to use. Will allow us to temporarily stop the Chinese conquest of Africa and reassess certain contracts that have already been agreed. You must grab this book. You must have this book. You must study this book and give this book, Package Principle, the greatest secret of Asia. You must give it to all the members of parliament in Africa. Brother Bayem Biik crafted this after thorough research of over 20 years. You can get this book from Lulu Publishers. And this is a scientific reference. We were the first in China, and we are no longer there. You can also watch Committee Hebrew Ethics, a video on the genocide of black people in Asia by the Chinese and by the mulatto Asian. So, what can you do? And me, what can we do about this? Yes, we are in this together as black people across the earth, whether you're in America, whether you're in Australia, whether you're in New Zealand, whether you are anywhere on earth. We are in this together. We are in this together. We are in this war together, because the death and the demise of the motherland of Africa is your death and demise too. Spread this message. This is what you can do. This vital message, spread it in all your social networks. This is Africa News LA. Let others know that China is recolonizing Africa and will take over the whole continent if we do not stop it today, now. Spread this message. Committee Hebrew Ethics, self-service breeds self-preservation. That's the way for the black people today. Self-preservation. Spread this message. Finally, Africa is free. We have won it already. United States of Africa, we are free. We have won. Thank you. This is Priest Teacher Rabbi Elem Dumizulu. You can contact us on this email, time to walk the talk. This is our website.
Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. If you've noticed that China seems to be coming up a lot more often in the news lately, well, you would be right. Chinese officials are eager to make China a superpower, and they're doing it with the help of an ancient Chinese Communist Party secret. Lots and lots of money. Yes, money. The key to a successful communist regime. The party has, over the past few years, lent huge sums of money to cash-strapped countries and then leveraged that debt to get what it wants. A lot of this is tied to a $1 trillion plan to build infrastructure around the world and then use it to create wealth, mostly for Chinese companies, move goods, mostly from China, and gain influence, mostly for the Chinese Communist Party. This project is called the Belt and Road Initiative, also known as One Belt, One Road. Let's get together and feel all right. Now, it's nothing new for countries with money to spare to help out needy neighbors by offering them a loan. Plenty of countries do it, including the U.S. But the Chinese Communist Party does it, as they like to put it, with Chinese characteristics.
This stands in stark contrast to China's approach, which encourages dependency, using opaque contracts, predatory loan practices, and corrupt deals that mire nations in debt and undercut their sovereignty, denying them their long-term self-sustaining growth.
As you might guess, some of the countries who have made these deals with China aren't feeling so all right anymore. On today's episode, we'll look at 5 countries gripped by the Chinese regime's debt trap. Number 5, Sri Lanka. The first port of call is Sri Lanka. In 2010, Sri Lanka got a $1.5 billion Chinese loan to build a giant port in the town of Hambantota, which would be great, except it has barely any shipping traffic. Without traffic through the port, Sri Lanka realized it couldn't pay back its debt to China. So instead, it signed away the entire port with a 99-year lease. The China Merchants Port Holding got a 70% controlling stake in the Hambantota port. With this agreement, we have started to pay back the loans, the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka told Parliament, and talked about there being more money for economic development. But critics say the cure might be worse than the disease. Some see the deal as a precedent for countries that owe money to China to accept deals that involve signing over territory. Territory that the Chinese regime might want to eventually use for military purposes. There is concern that the Chinese will transform its 99-year lease of the Sri Lankan port of Hambantota into another naval base, the exact debt trap method the Chinese used in Djibouti. And a Chinese naval base in Hambantota would be uncomfortably close to India, which might be one reason India might be considering a deal with Sri Lanka to run what's been called the emptiest airport in the world. Sure, there may not be much air traffic. In fact, there is currently no air traffic at all, but it is pretty close to the now Chinese port. That airport, by the way, was also built with the help of huge loans from China. Speaking of uncomfortably close to India, number 4, Pakistan. With an overall lending pipeline of over $40 billion for the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC, which is a big part of the Belt and Road, Pakistan already owes China more than $6 billion. That kind of debt gives China some leverage. First, China took control of the strategic deep-sea port of Gwadar, and will get to call the shots for 40 years thanks to a lease. And now, the Chinese military is building a joint naval and air force base for Chinese troops, and it's just a short distance up from the coast of Gwadar. According to this report, Pakistan not only owes a ton of money to China, but it's paying high interest rates on those loans as well, with some loans as high as 5%. In other cases, Chinese investors were promised crazy high returns on these infrastructure projects, like 34% each year, guaranteed by Pakistan's government for 30 years. But there are signs that Pakistan isn't all that comfortable being so heavily indebted to China. Back in November, Pakistan announced it would not seek Chinese funding for a new large-scale development. They said China's conditions for financing the long-delayed $14 billion Daimir Basha Dam on the Indus River were not doable and against our interest. Pakistan is also heading toward a debt crisis. That means they might have to get bailed out by the International Monetary Fund, which would not only be embarrassing for Pakistan and China, but also would probably limit future Chinese investment. Plus, after a recent election, it's not clear how the new prime minister is going to treat these ongoing deals with China. Has Pakistan learned its lesson after being forced to let China open a military base on its soil? Who knows? But certainly, it's not enough of a lesson to stop. Number 3, Montenegro. What's Montenegro? It's one of those Eastern European countries that's approximately the size of Yankee Stadium and is located here. No, wait, it's here. It's also the only country in Europe without a highway. That's not a joke. But then, the Chinese Communist Party offered to help Montenegro build one. The Montenegro government calls it the construction of the century and a pathway to the modern world. It would be a 100-mile highway with massive bridges that cut through difficult mountains and valleys. But Montenegro only has 630,000 people, which is fewer people than my small neighborhood in Queens. So, you might wonder why it has spent $950 million on a highway, especially since no one even knows where Montenegro is, so are they really trying to get there on a highway? There were two feasibility studies done in 2006 and 2012. Both of them suggested that their proposed highway would not have enough traffic to justify the cost. But, fortunately, the Chinese Communist Party was there to help with that. So, construction has begun. And surprise, China got a pretty sweet deal. 70% of the workers building the highway are from China. And in case of any legal dispute, an arbitration court in China has jurisdiction. And we all know the Chinese justice system is a model of fairness and rule of law, right? A European Union official who asked to remain anonymous is a little less enthusiastic, saying that Montenegro has run out of money. They have strangled themselves, and for the time being, this is a highway to nowhere, the official says. Highway to the nowhere zone. Doesn't sound as cool, does it? What's worse, the road is only partly done. They need another $1.2 billion to finish it, which the International Monetary Fund says Montenegro can't afford to borrow. With a debt-to-GDP ratio expected to soon hit 80%, Montenegro's government has already had to raise taxes, freeze public sector wages, and cut social spending. But Montenegro's prime minister has vowed to finish the highway at any cost and promises to deepen cooperation with China in other areas, including hydropower and tourism. And that's exactly the kind of commitment Chinese officials want. Number 2, the Maldives. The Maldives, a tropical paradise located in... Okay, I had to look this one up too. It's here, in the Indian Ocean. Gorgeous weather, secluded beaches, and what's this? The Chinese Maldives Friendship Bridge? It's a $225 million bridge that's funded mainly through a grant and loan from, you guessed it, China. The loan is the tough part. With the funding of this bridge, it puts the Maldives' debt-to-GDP ratio at nearly 100%, meaning it owes as much in debt as its entire economy generates in 1 year. Sounds kind of like my student loan debt. And take it from me, that's not healthy. But the Maldives is already dealing with being swallowed up by rising sea levels and could be underwater in 60 years. So really, does it matter if they're also financially underwater from debt to China? They're like, yeah, China, why don't you try to collect your money from the ocean? Well, the problem, of course, is that before the Maldives becomes the next Atlantis, the Chinese Communist Party could still force them to, say, give up land for a Chinese military base, which would just so happen to be in an excellent strategic location near India. But don't worry. The Chinese ambassador said in a recent speech that Chinese investment in the Maldives are totally normal and that the allegations of land grabbing and debt trap are totally groundless. Not that anyone asked, but it's better to get ahead of these things sometimes. Number 1, Djibouti. If you don't know where Djibouti is, you've got a problem. Because I've talked about it so many times on China Uncensored. The African country of Djibouti is home to China's first, but definitely not last, overseas military base. Also, it's just a few miles down the road from an American military base, giving rise to a shocking incident where Chinese personnel allegedly pointed lasers at U.S. pilots. Well, the joke's on them, because the U.S. military has already stopped using cats as pilots. But childish laser games are the least of America's worries. The Washington Post recently asked, can the Trump administration stop China from taking over a key African port? Why would it want to? Well, ever since the government of Djibouti seized control of the Darala container terminal from a Dubai-based company in February, there have been reports that it plans to strike a deal with a Chinese state-controlled firm to run the facility. And it just so happens that the port is the main access point for American, French, Italian, and Japanese bases in Djibouti, and is critical to launching anti-terrorism missions in parts of Africa and the Middle East. The U.S. military is now warning that if a Chinese state-run company gains control of the port, U.S. national security interests will be put at risk. Meanwhile, officials warn that Djibouti has been growing closer to and is increasingly indebted to the Chinese government. If only someone could shine a light on this problem, some kind of bright, single-color beam of light. So what do you think about the debt trap some countries have fallen into with China? Leave your comments below. And before you go, it's time to answer a question from a fan who supports China Uncensored on the crowdfunding website Patreon. David Michael White asks, Chris, which flavor of tea would you highly recommend for others to taste? This is probably the most important question I've ever answered on the show. I take tea very seriously. Years before I started China Uncensored, I worked at a Chinese tea house, so I know a thing or two. First of all, if you ever see some kind of blended tea like strawberry samurai green tea matcha latte, run the other way. Get some high-quality loose-leaf tea and learn how to brew it. Boiling water and green tea do not mix. Start some cheaper teas to develop your palate and grab
always
way up to
smoking.
more expensive
Lyrics like a
My favorite
bazooka.
type.
You are listening to Mutabaruka.
Yes, just kind of trying to make the people aware of what is happening. We might don't think it's going to happen here, but the signs, you know what I'm saying? You have to take sleep and mark death. You have to take sleep and mark death. Well, you better take sleep and mark death because we see this, we see the painting, even though it starts abstract, but we see it coming into focus. It's like you look on a place from afar, you drive on the road and you see something and you try to figure out it's what, but the nearer you see it come to you, is the more you know it's what. And if you're not taking sleep and mark death, if you're not listening to all these African countries and all these places that is not in Africa, talking about the same thing, and you say, what them talking about is exactly what is going on in Jamaica, except for the part where take over, where reach take over, because they are not here long enough to say take over, but the signs are there. And it's not trouble we are make. Them say if the watchman see the danger and don't want the people, the blood of the people will be on his shoulder. And apparently other people from other media houses is scared to say it, are afraid to say it. I don't know why, or maybe I know why, but you know it's weird. Them law want to tell you that the signs of this so-called new colonialism is not the history book colonialism that people study in the university. Infrastructure development. While the other people, them tear down your infrastructure, this new colonialists build up your infrastructure. Roads and bridges is the main thing. And we say it again, the Chinese just announced that there is a city that is going to be built in Caymanas that will be costing $2 billion US. Now, if nobody not asking the question, why the hell Chinese going to build a city in Kingston? Well, not Kingston, that's St. Catherine. Why the Chinese going to build a city? That's what the lady says, city. What is the purpose of building a city in Kingston? And not only that, what is the cost to Jamaica for doing this. Nothing is free. Nothing is free. We have to start from the premise that nothing is free and work yourself up. This is the cutting edge. And yeah, this is the cutting edge on RFM. We've been playing a series of continental Africans on the continent, talking about the Chinese invasion of Africa. And we have here, subtly, for now, the Chinese invasion taking place. And we want to bring the attention of the people to these things that is happening outside of Jamaica, far, far away, that we never can say we never hear. You know, remember say, can't say me never did a one, you understand? So, we are going to continue. This is the last one we're playing of this series here for the night. Why listen to this? I will just play 5 countries that fall under the grip of this Chinese colonialism. We're going to play now countries in Africa. We'll give Kenya. We'll play a clip about Kenya and Zambia.
Hi, welcome back to African Insider. Man, it's been a while since I uploaded a video. If you've noticed lately, China seems to be coming up more often in the news on Africa. I know what you're thinking, guys, but I'm referring to debts. You see, China has in the past few years lent huge sums of money to cash-strapped African countries and then use that debt to get what they want. If African countries are not careful, over time, the debt they have to China is going to be more than they can possibly pay back. Experts agree that the ability of African countries to service their debts to China strongly depends on whether the loans were used for the purposes they were intended for, namely infrastructures and projects.
5 countries that is indebted to China. One of them is Kenya. China now owns more than 70% of Kenya's bilateral debt. 70%, with billions of dollars owed to China. This is not joke business. Then we talk about the 5th one. The 4th one is Ethiopia. Who would have known Ethiopia owe billions of dollars to China. This is supposed to be a country that has never been conquered. Debt owed to China is $12.2 billion. That is what Ethiopia owed China, $12.2 billion. Trains deleted Ethiopia. Oh my gosh. China cuts back investment in Ethiopia. These are some headlines where I read I saw. Ethiopia announces 4 more industrial parks. Okay. Africa should avoid forfeiting sovereignty to China. That is the 4th country, Ethiopia. The 3rd country, we're going on as it go on. We're trying to see this thing properly here in the dark. Yeah. The 3rd country in Africa is Maldives. That's a little country there. Owe China 2.5 billion. The population of that is 400,000. You serious? 400,000, them owe how much billions to China. Why may I tell you? I wonder if we understand where I'm going in Jamaica. Wonder if you understand where I'm going in Jamaica. all eyes is on Jamaica, you know, because Jamaica have the biggest Chinese investment in the Caribbean right now. Jamaica have the biggest investment in the Caribbean from China. Then now, number 2, we have coming up. Come up here. Number 2. Okay. I never see that one there, no. I can see if I can see it, yeah. All right, we'll look on a picture here. We have to wait till the picture change. Madagascar. That is the country off the coast of Africa there. Still recognized as an African country. And then we have Djibouti. Here the man mentioned Djibouti in the previous clip. 5 countries in Africa where is heavily indebted to China. Heavily indebted to China. And we have it, as I said before, take sleep and mark debt. If we not do that, something wrong with we. If we not see something I go on, and I go on like we are hide we head in the sun like the ostrich. We're not serious argument. So now we have some reason I like read them things, but enough reading this. Can't bother read it in the night, yeah. Trust me. Can't bother read it in the night, yeah. Okay, so yes. All right, so we release up these reasoning we want to play.
That Africans were taken, and this we seldom say, the first civilization to take Africans out of this continent were the Arabs. And they took Africans from the eastern coast. And it is sad that in that part of the world, there are not many Africans who remained, because it was in the business of the Arab enslaver to castrate Africans. We never say that, but we must say it because it is historically significant. Then the Europeans came, the Portuguese came, the Spaniards came, the Germans came, the French came, the Belgians came. Africa became the hunting ground for the European colonizers, and we were the spot. We built, our ancestors built the United States of America, our ancestors built Europe, and when slavery had lost its shine and sheen, the Europeans abolished it, but they replaced it with yet another pernicious enterprise, the colonization of Africa. The Europeans sat in Berlin, in Germany, in 1884, and they looked at the map of Africa and parceled it out. The British had their share, the Germans had their share, and Tanzania or Tanganyika was their share, as was Rwanda and Burundi. The Spaniards were Johnny-come-latelys in the arena, and they got little Equatorial Guinea and Southwest Africa. The French were here, the Portuguese were here, and we were colonized. This time round, they did not take us away. They came here, and they controlled us, and they told us, not in so many words, that we were children of a lesser God. And we were treated as if we were children of a lesser God. In fact, they told us that on the day of creation, we were merely hewers of wood and drawers of water. And if anybody were to doubt it in 1948, it was more blatant when Hendrik Vervoet instituted the apartheid regime in South Africa. But yet there is a sense in which the God that we worship never sleeps. The colonial enterprise ran its course, and the European tribes, the Europeans never called themselves tribes, they called them nations, were engaged in a war. First in 1918, the European tribes fought, and they had something called the League of Nations, which died. Then they fought again in 1945. And what is unique about the European nations is that when they are engaged in tribal wars, they call them world wars. So there was another war between 1945, 1939 and 1945. And after that, a new kid on the block, the United States of America, took the lead in saying that colonialism was something that was undesirable. But at that time, Africans were never quiet. Those who had been taken out had already started agitating. Many of us here will remember Marcus Garvey, of whom Bob Marley says, Garvey was a buffalo soldier in the heart of America. And many of us will remember W.E.B. Du Bois. Many of us will remember that they started agitating that Africans must regain their dignity and their independence. And indeed, in 1847, in Liberia, a small group of Africans were brought back in Monrovia, and Liberia became the first independent black nation in the continent of Africa. So soon thereafter in Sierra Leone, they also created yet another colony. But Africa was colonized, except Ethiopia, which they tried to take in 1938 and exiled Professor Dr. Haile Selassie, and unfortunately they were defeated, as you remember, in the Battle of Adwa. Africa can defeat European tribes. This history is necessary that we are able to appreciate the freedom that we gained. So that Garvey came, W.E.B. Du Bois came, but there was another crop after the 1940s who had the advantage of European education. And there were people in Europe also who are beginning to recognize that indeed equality was necessary. And this was not anything new. In 1776 in the United States of America, the American state sitting in Philadelphia in the United States of America declared unto themselves that all men are born equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. A few years later in France, after the revolution, they also recognized that we were to be equal, so that the colonized nations which had now taken Africans thought that they were safe. They had taken Leopold Sédar Senghor from Senegal to Paris, and they thought that they were creating a little Frenchman. Little did they know that they were creating somebody who would want to overthrow them. They took Félix Houphouët-Boigny from Côte d'Ivoire, and they thought that they were creating somebody who would be subservient to them. They took Ahmed Sékou Touré and Modibo Keïta, and they thought they were safe. Little did they know that they were creating the future leaders and agitators against French colonization. And it did not stop there. The Portuguese also took Agostinho Neto and Amilcar Cabral and Eduardo Mondlane to Lisbon. Little did they know that those individuals would be the catalyst that would be necessary in the process of decolonization. The British also had their fair share. They took others. They took Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere, Hastings Kamuzu Banda, Kenneth David Kaunda, and many others to the United Kingdom, Jomo Kenyatta. Little did they know that those would be the individuals who sometimes later, and in Ghana, of course, they took the Osage for Kwame Nkrumah, and in Nigeria, they took Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, and Sir Ahmadu Bello, the Sultan of Sokoto. There is a sense, therefore, in which these individuals started recognizing that having been enslaved, having been colonized, we now had to liberate ourselves. And the agitation started. And Kwame Nkrumah and his Ghana acquired independence in 1957. And I still can hear Kwame Nkrumah through the vicissitudes of time saying in Accra, Ghana, that Ghana is free and will never be colonized again. But the freedom of Ghana means nothing if the rest of Africa is not free. I can hear...
And this is the cutting edge where I say, are we that, you know? Are we that for the night, yeah? Matrix in the house. Yes, Matrix in the house. So you and off. We'll come forward there from 2 o'clock to 5:45 with a stepping razor. Why you know all the people who you think I don't know her name now, a current name.
So who I tell you who said?
Yeah.
About 2 weeks ago, me find out
well, you mean find out a Karen. You see the other daughter, she was out there with, and she sell what them call it now? Ads, and she get the #1 ads lady for the. She named Karen. So me go link up Karen with Kaka. I never even know the other one, the name Karen, you know. Yeah. After me and I there a couple years well, me don't know that she named Karen. She has out as no Kia.
No, the one in the office.
Oh, named Kia. And she named Karen. She'll still BM to me, you know. She'll still BM to me. I always go on about Karen. She'll still BM to me.